So it says we are live.
So good evening. I'll call this hearing to order. This public meeting, as required under the Planning Act, is being held through remote electronic participation in accordance with the Municipal Act 2001 as amended. Good evening. My name is Michelle Moore and I'm the Deputy Secretary Treasurer of the Land Division Committee. I'd like to take a moment to introduce you to the members of the Land Division Committee. Liz Danielson, representing Algonquin Highlands. Liz Danielson, representing the Township of Algonquin Highlands. Pat Kennedy, representing the Municipality of Dysart et al. Bob Schneider, representing the Municipality of Highlands East, and Bill Blakes, representing the Township of Minden Hills. Also in attendance for the meeting this evening is the county's Director of Planning, Mr. Steve Stone. The first item on the agenda is our land acknowledgement statement. We respectfully acknowledge that the County of Haliburton is located on Treaty 20 Mississauga territory and in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the William Treaties First Nations, which are Curve Lake, Rama, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Beausoleil, Georgina Island First Nations. We acknowledge a shared presence of Indigenous nations throughout the area and recognize its original Indigenous inhabitants as the stewards of its land and waters since time immemorial. Our next item of business this evening is to elect a chair and a vice chair for the 2022 Land Division Committee. I will now call for nominations for the position of chair.
Nominate Liz.
Was that Bill?
Yes, this was Bill.
Thank you. And a seconder, please. Moved by Member Blakes, second by Member Kennedy. Be it resolved that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton appoints Member Danielson to be chair of the 2022 calendar year. All in favor?
Aye.
Carried.
Thank you, gentlemen, I think.
I will now call for nominations for the position of vice chair.
Can I nominate Pat?
Do we have a seconder? Moved by Member Blakes, second by Member Snyder. Be it resolved that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton appoints Member Kennedy to be vice chair for the 2022 calendar year. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's carried. I will now turn the balance of the meeting over to Chair Danielson to continue with the balance of the meeting.
Okay, next on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions that anyone would like to note? Now, did we anticipate a resolution to accept the agenda or not?
Yes, staff have drafted a resolution.
If I could have a mover and a seconder then to adopt the agenda for the meeting for this evening. Moved by Pat Kennedy, seconded by Bob Snyder.
Moved by Member Kennedy, second by Member Snyder. Be it resolved that the February 14th, 2022 Land Division Committee agenda be hereby approved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest with respect to this evening's business?
None from Bill.
Okay, hearing none. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes of the November the 8th Land Division Committee meeting?
I'll move it.
Moved by Bill Blakes, seconded by Pat Kennedy.
Moved by Member Blake, second by Member Kennedy. Be it resolved that the minutes of the Land Division Committee meeting held November 8th, 2021 be hereby be approved as printed and circulated.
All in favor?
Aye.
I don't believe that there's any business arising from the previous meeting. Is that correct, Mr. Stone?
No.
Okay. So we'll move on to the applications for consideration. The first application is by Barber and Ronchka. If you'd like to review that application for us, please.
So application for consent H-004 of 20 in the name of Edward and Lynn Barber and Richard and Susan Ronchka. The location of the property is part of Lot 14, Concession 6 in the geographic township of Stanhope, now in the township of Algonquin Highlands. And the purpose of the application is to create a new lot together with an easement for a right-of-way. And I will now ask our Director of Planning to go through his planning analysis and provide the committee with any comments that have been received on the application. Mr. Stone?
Yes, thank you. This application, as you can see, has been before the committee on a number of occasions. And each time we sort of figure out, I guess the lawyer who's trying to register the deeds figures out there's a couple extra things that need to be done to make it okay for us to stamp the deed. The latest being that he became aware of the shore road allowance being added inadvertently to the one of the lots prior to us stamping the deed. So in essence, what the new condition does, it allows for the township of Algonquin Highlands to take back their shore road allowance and then further, I guess, convey it back to the applicants in two separate parts so they can be merged properly in the front of the severed and retained lots. So the condition allows for that to happen, and it also gives them some extra time to do that. So as per, and I can speak to this a little later in the meeting, but as of January 1st, the province now allows for provisional approvals to be for 2 years. So by approving this additional condition, they will have 2 years to satisfy all the requirements of the original approval from the committee, as well as allowing for the merger to take place properly. Thank you.
Is there anyone present who, from the public or representing the applicants that wish to speak?
So I did have conversations with David Shapiro, and he's actually watching on YouTube. He's on vacation right now, but Ted Barber's in attendance, so I will allow him to talk. So I've asked him to unmute. Yeah.
Mr. Barber, can you hear us? You are on mute, so we can't hear you. While we're waiting to see if Mr. Barber can connect, do any of the members have any questions about the application as it stands right now? So if I'm to understand you, Steve, the shore road allowances at present belong to what is the retained lot, both of them?
That's correct.
Why can't they just be surveyed out? I don't understand the process about why they have to go back to the municipality to.
Because what they were supposed to do is they're supposed to be conveyed in two separate parts to match both the severed and the retained. And we had already got to the point of actually stamping the deeds, so they had to be returned to correct that. And as a result of that, he's got his hand up. Let's see.
Mr. Barber, you're on mute. So if you can locate the mute button, I believe it should be in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. Well, that's unfortunate that we can't,
He does have his hand up, but I can't seem to connect with him. I could promote him to a panelist. Is that what you would like?
well, if he's got his hand up, he obviously wants to address the application, so.
Okay, let me promote him and see if that works.
And then you can,
Yeah, so he has been, he's allowed to join now, so.
you might have to click join, Mr. Barber. Well, I'm not sure how much time we'll give him if he's not able to access the meeting. I just would ask committee members one more time if they have any questions or concerns about this application.
I don't think so.
Okay, well, hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder to put the motion on the floor? Moved by Pat Kennedy,
I'll second.
seconded by Bill Blakes.
So the decision is that should the Land Division Committee wish to grant the decision, the condition that would be added, or the new condition would be the following: that the applicant shall provide to the satisfaction of the Secretary Treasurer confirmation from a solicitor that the portion of the closed shore road allowance in front of and to the north of the lot to be severed is appropriately merged on title. And 2, confirmation from a solicitor that the portion of the closed shore road allowance in front of and to the north of the lot to be retained is appropriately merged on title.
And Steve, you've discussed these conditions with Mr. Barber.
Well, more so with, yes, that is correct, but I did have a good conversation with David Shapiro as well, and he concurs with the condition.
Okay, so if you could read the resolution approving the application or the request.
Sorry, Chair Danielson, we had not done resolutions, just that if the committee wished to grant the application, whether they would be in favor or not based on the condition proposed.
Okay, I thought I misunderstood what our discussion that we had about this, and I understood that we would have a mover and a seconder to formally put the matter before us, and then the committee would vote on it. But we'll follow this process and talk about it at the end of the meeting. So all in favor of the conditions? That's carried. I've got to say, this is my problem, that we're actually approving an application without putting a motion on the floor and just voting on it. And that to me is so contrary when we're having resolutions for other items, of general items on the agenda, but not for the actual applications. It just doesn't seem like the right process. And maybe, Pat, you would maybe understand that better than the members of the public, that it's a matter of formal process that we follow at council, and it seems like we're missing something by not having a mover and a seconder to actually read a resolution to approve the
It
request.
seems more of the standard of having a mover, seconder, any discussion, then call for the vote. Yeah.
Okay, well, my apologies for that, and particularly to Michelle, because I know we talked about this, and so I'm sorry if I misunderstood. So we'll move on to the next application, which is Hewitt in the township of Minden Hills.
So application for consent number H-029 of 21. The owner is Kim Hewitt. The location of the property is part of Lot 3 Concession A in the geographic township of Minden, now in the township of Minden Hills. The purpose of this application is to create a new lot. And I'll now turn it over to our planner to provide the planning analysis and any comments that have been received on the application.
So thank you very much. With regards to this application, the basics is the lot to be created is situated within the village of Minden. And so it would be considered a settlement area, both in the county official plan and the local official plan. The township planning staff have looked at it from a conformity exercise as it relates to their policies as well as their zoning regulations, and it is in keeping or compliant with their official plan and their zoning regulations. And the lot to be developed will be similar to in nature. It'll be a residential use, very reminiscent of what is existing in the neighborhood. In terms of agency comments, there were none, and there was no input from any public in the vicinity of the proposed application. And as such, we've provided a series of conditions for committee's consideration. And probably the most significant one would be those that the township has asked for. And of that would be a parkland dedication, which is a standard fee that the applicant will have to provide to the township as part of the final approval of this application. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone representing the applicant here to speak to it?
So Andrea is here. And so I've asked her to unmute, and hopefully we can get a connection with her.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you, Steve?
Good, thanks. So you're now
Yeah, we have no problem paying the fee that goes with the parkland that you had mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So do any of the committee members have questions of the applicants or of our planner?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question or the response about Parkland. Did Mr. Hewitt say there was no problem?
No
There
problem.
was no problem, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Snyder.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. So the lot is serviced with water and sewer, is that correct?
That is
That's
correct.
And is the frontage actually on Prince or is it going to be on Teesdale?
We will have the frontage on Teesdale.
On Teesdale, okay. So there shouldn't be an issue with getting a driveway entrance permit there, is that correct?
We've never actually acquired about it, but I'm hoping that we can get a driveway access there, yes.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Yeah, I would have asked a question myself about access. There's a lot of accesses off both those roads, and it'll be interesting. I'm sure you'll be able to work it out, but I would have asked if you'd already got approval for that. Another question that I had was on the aerial imagery. It suggests that the retained lot is going to be the one in blue, and actually, aren't you retaining the lot with the residence that's already on it?
Yes, we own the property, and then we're subdividing the lot off of our home.
So it's the corner lot that you propose to convey.
That is correct.
Okay. Are there any other questions from committee members?
Not from me.
Okay, so at this point, you would let us know what the conditions are, Michelle?
Yes, I will, Liz. Should the Land Division Committee decide to grant this application, the following conditions would address any issues identified through the circulation process to various agencies. Confirmation be received from a solicitor that the certificate of official will be scanned and attached to the electronic registration of the transfer. 2, that the county be provided with a description that is consistent with the application and equal to that required for registration of a deed or transfer or other conveyance of interest in land under the provision of the Registry Act or Land Titles Act. 2 copies of the registered reference plan required and an electronic file containing the digital plotting of the description under the provision of the Registry or Land Titles Act, including the textual description of the file format, map, standards used, scale, and location of information such as lot, concession, and municipality in the geo-referenced AutoCAD format. Alternatively, the committee being provided with an order pursuant to Section 150 of the Land Titles Act, RSO 1990 or Section 80 of the Land Registry Act, issued by a land register exempting the transfer from the requirement that a reference plan be deposited. If it has been determined that the subject property is a whole lot on an original township plan of survey, an exemption order cannot be provided by the land register. Satisfactory proof of same shall be provided by a solicitor with confirmation stating the reason why an exemption order cannot be provided. 3, the balance of any outstanding taxes, including penalties and interest, shall be paid to the municipality as required. 4, a copy of all reference plans associated with this application shall be provided to the planner for the Township of Minden Hills for approval prior to registration as required. 5, that the registered owner shall ensure to the satisfaction of the Township of Minden Hills that the township is fully reimbursed for any costs incurred by the township for professional services related specifically to this application as required. 6, that settlement of cash in lieu of parkland dedication in the amount of $2,000 for the severed parcel shall be paid to the Township of Minden Hills pursuant to Section 51.1 of the Planning Act as required. 7, prior to the endorsement of the deeds, the Secretary Treasurer shall receive a letter from the Township of Minden Hills confirming that conditions 3, 4, 5, and 6 have been fulfilled to its satisfaction. Once the applicable conditions have been satisfied, it is recommended that the applicant agent contact the Township of Minden Hills to request that a clearance letter be issued. And the notes on this file are in respect to endangered species, as well as planning act as it relates to official plan policies and zoning bylaw provisions from the Township of Minden Hills, as well if there are any archaeological potential or areas, there is information relating to archaeological resources if they're identified on site and what the applicant can do.
Any questions on the conditions?
Yeah.
All in favor of the conditions in the application? That's approved. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Hewitt. So the next application is by Bonus and Spink in the Township of Minden Hills.
Application for consent H-30 of 21. The owner is Peter Bonus and Mary Spink. The location of the property is part of Lot 3, Concession 5 in the geographic Township of Minden, now in the Township of Minden Hills. The purpose of the application is to create a new lot.
Any additional information you would like to provide, Mr. Stone?
Certainly. This particular application is a product of a local official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment that was approved by Minden Hills. I guess it would have been the summer of last year. And by way of background, the Bonus family have 2 cottages on 1 lot. And what they're trying to do is separate the 2 cottages on individual or separate conveyable lots so that they can go about their family trust trust measures as it relates to inheritance and estate. As I said, the applications have their own, or at least the property has its own specific official plan policy at the township level that it used to allow for 2 cottages on 1 lot, and it's now been amended to reflect 1 cottage on 1 lot. And similarly with the zoning, it reflects the lot size that ultimately will be created if the committee approves this application. In terms of public input, you'll see that the township has provided their consultation comments, which is included in the report. No other agencies had any significant input other than that the Ministry of Transportation noted that the property is accessed by a private road. There was several emails received by a neighbor to the applicant, and his concerns that he was raising is about encroachment of a structure on the bonus property onto his. And there was some dialogue between the applicant, the neighbor, as well as the neighbor's lawyer. And the consensus was that they would, as part of the final approval of this application, they would survey the property to determine whether or not that building was in fact encroaching onto the neighbor's property. And if so, then they would take necessary steps to relocate it so that it was wholly on the severed property. And so with that, the committee has several conditions to consider. As I mentioned, there is a requirement for cash in lieu, just like the previous application. And there is a condition now that requires the surveyor to investigate the claim of encroachment, and that is found in condition number 3. Thank you.
Is there anyone here representing the applicant?
So I was looking to see if the neighbor, where he did indicate he was going to come on. I don't see him, and I know that I talked to Mr. Bonus tonight, and he indicated that he wasn't very tech savvy from a Zoom perspective, but he did acknowledge that he was agreeable to all the conditions and will work closely with the neighbor to resolve that concern. And I did reach out to David Sapira before he left on holidays, and he's in agreement to condition number 3 as well.
Okay, thank you. Do any of the committee members have questions about the application? Snyder,
Sorry,
and then Mr. Blakes.
go ahead, Bob.
Thank you. This may not be something for the committee, but I'm just curious. There seems to be a dock on the retained section that crosses the lot line extension between the 2 lots. Is this correct? And is it going to be corrected so there's appropriate setback?
Well, it wasn't, certainly that would be a township zoning requirement in terms of setbacks for docks and things like that. So we can certainly raise that with the applicant and also with the township when they go to clear their conditions. But it wasn't part of their request for conditions.
I agree. I think that should be a condition, at somewhere along the line before this is officially approved, because if the lots were, if the 1 lot became owned by someone outside of the family, it could very quickly become quite an issue, given the sight lines of the dock.
Well, committee certainly can amend the condition number 3 to also include the dock projection as well.
Bill, you had a comment that you wanted to make?
No, I was just gonna, I'm assuming that the survey has been completed about the initial encroachment, the shed. Is that correct?
No, as I understand it, they have ordered that survey. I know I've had conversations with the surveyor, and they're to undertake that as soon as the weather permits them.
Okay. And my second question was going to be, and whether it's relevant here or not, maybe to the municipality, do you know anything about the shoreline allowance, if it's owned, or is it?
I do not have that information, but looking at the parcel fabric, it suggests to me that it is owned.
It would appear, only sometimes that's not correct.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, but quite often it's a condition of an application like this at the municipal level. I'm surprised though that there's no comment about
Yeah.
who owns it. Any other questions or concerns? Is the committee in agreement with asking for a condition about the dock and its positioning? That's agreed.
Yep.
Okay, if we could just add a note with respect to that, please, Michelle.
And would you
It
like
seems-
me to amend condition 3 and that confirmation of dock location be provided? Is that the committee's wish?
Well, I'm not sure that it's so much confirmation of dock location, but that the dock be required to be in line with the property lines.
So what I might suggest to the committee is that, as condition number 3 reads, that the applicant's solicitor confirm through a Ontario land surveyor that all building structures and docks, that would, I think, suffice.
Yeah,
with,
that'll
the
do it.
concern.
I'll do it. Much easier to do it now than later. I was involved in one in a lake up here, and
Well,
it gets messy in a hurry.
Got a couple of them and they're
Yeah.
pretty nasty. Okay, so I'm sorry, did we heard the conditions?
Oh, I see that Daniel is just, Colin Daniel has just joined the meeting. Would you like to chat with him?
Well, if he has something that he'd like to add, or if the committee members have questions for him, sure, bring him in.
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I'm sorry, I was on the YouTube link. I didn't understand the difference. So, yeah, I didn't. I just because I heard my name, I thought I'd try and just jump in. But as you mentioned, there hasn't been a survey yet, so I'm fine with the condition that the shed be moved if the survey shows that it's on our property. But we did measure. We did come out and find the stake and measure with a compass. I had a forester come in and do that, and it looks like it is partially on our property, so it's not. Just wanted the committee to know that this wasn't sort of a frivolous concern that I'm fairly confident that it is partially on our property.
Okay, well, that as that's included as a condition, that's satisfactory to everyone.
It's satisfactory to me, yes, for sure.
Okay, that's good. Did you have any questions of the committee?
No, thanks.
Okay,
Excuse me, can I just, Colin, can you confirm if the shoreline road allowance is owned, or is it,
great.
was it purchased in the past?
That I don't know because it's not.
It's the neighbor's property.
I'm the neighbor, right? So
Oh, you're the neighbor, sorry, okay.
I'm the neighbor who's concerned about the shed.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Guess you're not too concerned about the shoreline then, okay.
Well, I am somewhat, but I actually don't know the answer. So
Yeah, okay, sorry.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Daniel. So shall we hear the conditions just one more time? Yes,
Would you like me to go ahead and read them then?
I think we're ready for that. Yeah.
Okay. Should the Land Division Committee decide to grant this application, the following proposed conditions would address the issues identified through the circulation process. That confirmation be received from a solicitor that the certificate of official will be scanned and attached to the electronic registration of the transfer. 2, that the county be provided with a description that is consistent with the application and equal to that required for the registration of a deed, transfer, or other conveyance of interest in land under the provision of the Registry Act or Land Titles Act. Alternatively, the committee being provided with an order pursuant to Section 150 of the Land Titles Act, RSO 1990, or Section 80 of the Land Registry Act, RSO 1990, issued by the Land Register, exempting the transfer from the requirement that a reference plan be deposited if it has been determined that the subject property is a whole lot on an original township plan of survey, and an exemption order cannot be provided by a Land Register. Satisfactory proof of same shall be provided by a solicitor with confirmation stating the reason why an exemption order cannot be provided. Number 3, as amended by the committee, that the applicant's solicitor confirm through an Ontario land surveyor that all building, structures, and docks that are presently located on the severed and retained parcels respectively are either wholly on the said lands respectively, or if encroaching on to abutting lands, have been relocated in such a fashion as to comply with the regulations of the Township of Minden Hills zoning bylaw. Number 4, the balance of any outstanding taxes, including penalties and interest, and any local improvement charges, if applicable, shall be paid to the municipality. Number 5, that the registered owner shall obtain an amendment to the official plan and zoning bylaw for both the severed and retained lots to the satisfaction of the Township of Minden Hills. It is recommended that the registered owner make application to the Township of Minden Hills immediately following provisional consent being granted. 6, that a copy of all reference plans associated with this application shall be provided to the planner for the Township of Minden Hills for approval prior to registration as required. 7, that the registered owner shall ensure to the satisfaction of the Township of Minden Hills that the township is fully reimbursed for any costs incurred by the township for professional services related specifically to this application as required. 8, that settlement of cash in lieu of parkland dedication in the amount of $2,000 for the severed parcel should be paid to the Township of Minden Hills pursuant to Section 51(1) of the Planning Act. Prior to the endorsement of the deeds, the Secretary Treasurer shall receive a letter from the Township of Minden Hills confirming that conditions 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 have been fulfilled to its satisfaction. Once applicable conditions have been satisfied, it's recommended that the applicant agent contact the Township of Minden Hills to request that a clearance letter be issued. And the notes on this file relate to the endangered and threatened species. That the applicant is advised that the official plan policies and zoning bylaw provisions change from time to time. They should be aware of such. That the county has a shoreline tree preservation bylaw, that the owner should be aware of said bylaw. And the other notes on this file relate to archaeological potential and what should happen if there are archaeological resources found or identified on site.
All in favor with the conditions and application is heard. It's carried. Okay, our next application is Phillips in the Township of Minden Hills.
Application for consent H31 of 21 in the name of John and Teresa Phillips. The location of the property is part of lot 23, concession 6 in the geographic township of Lutterworth, now in the Township of Minden Hills. The purpose of the application is to permit a lot addition. I'll now turn it over to our planner to give the planning analysis and related information.
Thank you. So this application is a simple lot addition. The lands that are going to be added to shoreline property across the laneway, shall we say. The lands are designated rural in both the county official plan and the local official plan, and it's zoned that way as well. The applicant is desirous of severing the land for his neighbor so that the neighbor can build a detached garage to support the seasonal or cottage recreational use that's across the laneway. With that, the committee will note the conditions are relatively standard. Section or condition number 4 is probably the most important one that deals with the addition of to make sure that the severed lands are actually joined and become part and parcel of the shoreline property. And also condition number, I'm just going to get where that one is. Condition number 7 is also important because the Cobble Rose Lane is a private road, and so documentation is going to be required from the applicant's solicitor to ensure that any existing right-of-way benefits for the lands to the south, and there's a number of lots located there, are continuing on with this lot addition. So thank you very much. Happy to answer any questions. And also I do note that there's a number of observers in the attending, including the agent, the owner of lands doing the severing, the gentleman who's going to receive the lands, as well as a neighbor who's observing what's going on tonight.
Did any of those in attendance wish to address the committee or add any additional information?
Yeah, if you don't mind putting your hand up, and I'll bring any of those in. Not sure if Sue, if you want to. Yep, Sue is. I'll allow her to talk. So Sue, if you can just unmute yourself.
I'm unmuted, I believe.
Yeah.
All right. Good evening. Yeah, I'm the authorized agent for the applicant. I don't want to repeat anything Steve has said. I know it's a long evening, but I just wanted, yes, indeed, no new lot will be created. It is a lot addition. It will basically double the size of a existing undersized waterfront lot. And the applicant wishes to construct a private garage just for his own use on the property where the lot addition is. And the right-of-way is in place in an easement. It's owned by the Phillips, and nothing will change in terms of the access, and all the properties along the easement will have legal access.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else wish to speak to the application?
I believe Sandra has her hand up, so I'll let her in as well. So I'll mute Sue and bring in Sandra. Sandra, if you can unmute.
Thank you, Steve. Through you, Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. My family has owned two lots on Cobble Rose Lane since 1974, and we have no objection to what they're trying to do at 1030 Cobble Rose Lane, and are comforted by condition number 7 that allows us to have access. Our properties are 1064 and 1070 respectively, and so it's important for us to be able to access the road further up. So we're pleased to see that condition being part of this, your considerations this evening. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Any other comments? Do any of the committee members have questions of anyone present? Bob.
Hi, thank you again. Actually, this question is probably for Steve. It's an undersized lot currently. Is in the planning world, is it not appropriate opportunity comes to correct a non-compliant situation? And this is to do the lot addition should be larger.
Bob, you really broke up there. I wonder if you could try maybe when you want to, if you would repeat your question, but turn your video off while you're doing it. Sometimes that that helps, so there isn't any, it just
Yeah,
was broken up.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep, we can.
Okay, so sorry, the question was, it's a non-compliant lot currently. My understanding was in the planning world, whenever there's a non-compliant situation and there's an opportunity to correct that we should try and do that. And to correct the non-compliant, then the lot addition should be larger than what they're planning. Is that something that should be considered?
Well, with through my experience, what we in our world as planners, what we try to do is ensure bringing a lot in closer, what I would call closer compliance with the minimum regulations for that particular zone. And typically, when you're dealing with non-complying lots, the real issue is about the lot coverage. Again, it's typically a percentage thing. So adding to an undersized lot helps with the lot coverage perspective, but we don't. There's more practice in terms of not further complicating or for making a lot further in non-compliance with the regulations, but adding to is seen as a good thing. So, but not so far as to say you have to make it 100% compliance with the zoning regulations.
So a follow-up question then, do we know if they build the largest garage that is permissible under the zoning bylaw, will they exceed the lot coverage?
That I don't know. They haven't done a zoning review right at this moment for the garage, but I would say that in spite of that, it would have to comply with the maximum lot coverage, given the lot addition. So, and typically when you're, I mean, Sue may be able to, she's got her hand up, so she may be able to answer that question better than me.
Okay.
So I'll bring her back in.
Okay, good. I've got a question as well.
Oh, she.
Yes, I agree with Steve. Ideally, it is a very good point. Ideally, if you could bring it into compliance, that would be great. One of the things which is the non-compliance of this undersized lot is the frontage, and we obviously can't do anything about that with the lot addition. I think too, we'd end up with a very long, narrow lot that I don't think would be palatable to the Phillips, and I'm not sure financially the benefiting lot could afford that either. So I agree with Mr. Stone that bringing it closer into compliance is a step, a positive step, and probably the most realistic one that could be accomplished in this instance. In terms of the size of the garage, again, I agree with Mr. Stone that whatever would be built, you put in your building permit, you'd have to comply with the zoning standards. And if you wanted to vary something, you'd have to go through a minor variance process. And I think with the area and the fact that he wants to use the garage just for personal use, he shouldn't have a problem meeting those standards.
Okay, thank you. That answered my question as well about the size of the garage and proposed use of it, because that's a location where if somebody wanted to do something a little more substantial in a garage, it wouldn't go well, I don't think.
Right.
Any other questions from the committee?
Yep.
Would you read our conditions, please, Michelle?
Certainly. Should the Land Division Committee decide to grant this application, the following conditions would address the issues identified through the circulation to the various agencies. 1, that confirmation be received from a solicitor that the certificate of official will be scanned and attached to the electronic registration of the transfer. 2, that the county be provided with a description that is consistent with the application and equal to that required for registration of a deed transfer or other conveyance of interest in land under the provision of the Registry Act or Land Titles Act. 2 copies of the registered reference plan required, an electronic file containing the digital plotting of the description under the provision of the Registry Act or Land Titles Act, including the textual description of file format, map standards used, scale and location information such as lot, concession and municipality in a georeferenced AutoCAD drawing. Alternatively, the county be provided with an order pursuant to Section 150 of the Land Titles Act RSO 1990 or Section 80 of the Land Registries Act RSO 1990 issued by the Land Register exempting the transfer from the requirement that a reference plan be deposited. And if it has been determined that the subject property is a whole lot on an original township plan of survey and an exemption order cannot be provided by the land registrar, satisfactory proof of same shall be provided by a solicitor with confirmation stating the reason why an exemption order cannot be provided. 3, a solicitor's undertaking shall be received, which shall be to the effect that at the time of registration of the transfer to which the certificate under Section 53 sub 42 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 is affixed, the names of the owners of the abutting lands to which the parcels are being joined are the same as the transferees in the said transfer. 4, that a solicitor's undertaking shall be received by the County Land Division Office, which shall be to the effect that the severed parcel be added as a lot addition to the abutting parcel described as 1030 Cobble Rose Lane, concession 6, part lot 23, Minden Hills, assessment roll number 461605100074000, and that section 50 sub 3 or 5 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 shall apply to any subsequent conveyance or transaction of the severed parcels, and the certificates under section 53 sub 42 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 shall contain reference to this stipulation. 5, that confirmation be received from a solicitor that the resultant lots, severed lands, and the lands to which they are being added will be encumbered by any mortgage or mortgages as one lot at the time of registration of transfer, or that there are no outstanding mortgages, encumbrances on the lands to which the severed land is being added. 6, that an undertaking from a solicitor that the parcels will be consolidated under land titles onto one PIN for the resulting lot addition. 7, that the applicant's solicitor provide appropriate documentation that ensures that the continuation of rights-of-ways for all eligible properties which utilize Cobble Rose Lane to gain access to Highway 35 to the south of the lands to be severed. 8, that the applicant owner provide appropriate documentation that the balance of any outstanding taxes, including penalties and interest, shall be paid to the municipality. 9, that a copy of all reference plans associated with this application shall be provided to the planner for the Township of Minden Hills for approval prior to registration. 10, that the applicant provide appropriate documentation that the registered owner shall ensure to the satisfaction of the Township of Minden Hills that the township is fully reimbursed for any costs incurred by the township for professional services related specifically to this application. And 11, prior to the endorsement of the deeds, the Secretary Treasurer shall receive a letter from the Township of Minden Hills confirming that conditions 8, 9, and 10 have been fulfilled to its satisfaction. Once the applicable conditions have been satisfied, it's recommended that the applicant agent contact the Township of Minden Hills to request that a clearance letter is issued. And once again, the notes on this file relate to endangered or threatened species that exist or may exist in the area. That planning policies and zoning provisions change from time to time. The applicant shall be aware of said changes. That the county has a shoreline tree preservation bylaw that apply to the land and future owners of the land. And finally, if there are any areas of archaeological potential or archaeological resources that are encountered, provides contact information for the applicant. And then it's recommended that the registered owner consult with the township immediately following provisional consent being granted.
You've heard the conditions. All in favor? That's approved. Okay, and the last application is by Susan Edwards in the Township of Minden Hills. Lots going on in Minden Hills.
Was application for consent H-001 of 2022. The owner is Susan Edward. The location of the property is part of lot 17, concession 5 in the geographic township of Lutterworth, now in the township of Minden Hills. And the purpose of the application is an easement for a right-of-way. I will now ask our planner to go through the planning analysis and provide the committee with any comments that have been received on this application. Please, Steve.
Yes, thank you. So this application was previously approved by the committee, and unfortunately the documents were not received in time, and the application did lapse. So with discussions with the applicant's agent, the lawyer did apply on behalf of the Edwards again to allow for the creation of the right-of-way. So in essence, right-of-ways generally do not have a lot of policy guidance in both the provincial policy statement or the county official plan and township official plan. But it's safe to say that recreational properties can have access by private road and by right-of-way as long as it's deeded access out to a public road. So with that, the conditions are rather standard, and it's simply a common practice for the committee to consider these conditions, and noting that there are several conditions that have to be cleared by the township planner as well. Thank you.
Is there anyone here who wants to address us about this application?
So there is a Tom Edward. I'm going to allow him to speak if you don't mind. So
thanks, Steve. I just tuned in to see if I could help if there are any questions.
Okay, do any members of the committee have questions of either Steve or Mr. Edward?
None from Bill.
Okay, Bill, and then Pat. Oh, none from Bill, or?
No, none from Bill.
Okay, go ahead, Pat.
Yeah, this looks like it's just a correction of something that was missed back in 2010. I guess it was it?
Yes.
Yeah, so just correcting something that should have been looked after at that time. Just
well, it was a timing issue. The previous application was due to lapse in November of this past year, and unfortunately, the lawyer did think that the document was submitted, and unfortunately, we didn't receive it in time, and it was deemed to have lapsed.
Right. Thank you.
Any other
questions? The lot used to be 3 lots, actually. It was divided into 3 lots. It was originally one lot, 212, which is a lot north, used to be one of the 3 lots too. Actually, Minden or Lutterworth Council forced me to sever it into 3 lots. I didn't want 3 lots. But the lot that's now granting the right-of-way was the one that we camped on for 12 years. It took us 10 years to get a building permit to build. Oh, it's a long story. I've been through a lot with it, but so that driveway was put in before the actual 2 lots were severed into 2.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Edward.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Can we hear the conditions? Or I should ask one more time, are there any other questions about the application? Go ahead with the conditions, please.
I have read the conditions, by the way, and I'm okay with them.
Okay, that's good. Go ahead.
Go ahead and read them.
Yeah.
Okay. If the Land Division Committee decides to grant this application, the following conditions would address issues identified through the circulation process. So 1 hard copy and 1 digital copy of an acceptable reference plan or legal description of the severed lands, and the deed or instrument in triplicate conveying the severed lands shall be submitted to the Secretary Treasurer for review and consent endorsement within a period of 1 year after the notice of decision is given under Section 53, sub 17 or 24 of the Planning Act. It's recommended that the applicants surveyor consult with the County of Haliburton GIS technologist to confirm an acceptable format for the digital copy of the reference plan. 2, the deeds or instruments submitted to the Secretary Treasurer for review and consent endorsement shall be accompanied by an undertaking from the applicant's solicitor confirming that the deeds will be registered on title within 2 years from the date of the certificate as per section 53 sub 43 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 as amended. The lands to be severed are for the purpose of establishing an easement for a right-of-way for the benefit of lands located in concession 5, part of lot 17, reference plan 19R3266, parts 21 to 24, geographic township of Lutterworth, and further described as 1186 Woodpecker Trail, assessment roll number 4616051 0005900, currently owned by Thomas Edward, and any subsequent conveyance of that portion of the land to be severed for an easement is subject to section 50 sub 3 if in a plan of subdivision, or subsection 55 if in a plan of subdivision of the Planning Act RSO 1990. Neither the lands to be severed nor the benefiting lands are to be reconveyed with easement unless a further consent is obtained. The registered owner shall provide to the satisfaction of the Secretary Treasurer 1, certification from a solicitor or Ontario land surveyor that the severed parcel has a registered legal right-of-way from a publicly maintained road. And 2, if the access road crosses Crown land, an opinion from a solicitor that the access road is not a private forest road and therefore the Crown recognizes that the severed parcel has a right of access as set out in the Public Lands Act RSO 1990. The registered owner shall pay the balance of any outstanding taxes, including penalty and interest, and any local improvement charges if applicable to the municipality. 6, a copy of all reference plan associated with this application shall be provided to the municipal planner for the Township of Minden Hills for approval prior to registration. 7, the registered owner shall ensure to the satisfaction of the Township of Minden Hills that the township is fully reimbursed for any costs incurred by the Township of Minden Hills for professional services related specifically to this application. 8, prior to the endorsement of the deeds, the Secretary Treasurer shall receive a letter from the Township of Minden Hills confirming that conditions 5, 6, and 7 have been fulfilled to its satisfaction. Once the applicable conditions have been satisfied, it's recommended that the applicant agent contact the Township of Minden Hills to request that a clearance letter is issued. The notes on this file relate to the shoreline preservation bylaw, archaeological interest potential, as well as it's recommended that the owner consult with the Township of Minden Hills immediately following provisional consent being granted.
Mr. Stone.
If I can suggest one amendment for the committee. So condition number 1 says for a period of 1 year. So the Planning Act was changed January 1st of this year to allow for 2 years. So strike the 1 year and change it to 2 years.
Thank you. Everyone is in favor of those conditions in the application that's presented? All in favor?
Yes.
Thank you. So I don't believe that we have any correspondence for consideration. There is a statistics report. Are there any questions on the statistics report? Were you planning on a resolution to accept them or just to receive them for information?
Respectfully, Chair Danielson, there was no statistic report added to the agenda this evening.
There it was listed on the agenda and I thought, oh, okay, I must have missed something. Thank you.
You're welcome.
She says respectfully. On to other business. And the first item under other business is something that's really quite extraordinary. We wanted to make sure that we recognized and show the counties in all of our appreciation for service. And in these two cases, I think it's rather extraordinary service. Members on the Lands Division committee. John Clayton from Algonquin Highlands served on the Lands Division for 37 years. And Craig Pettit from Highlands East served on the committee for 39 years. And that's just extraordinary. And many of those years, well, at least some that I know of, as the chair of the committee. Both of them really have contributed an awful lot to the county on our behalf, and we can't appreciate that effort enough. So you've seen on the agenda that there's a plaque that will be hopefully delivered to both of those gentlemen, and once again, we'd like to thank them. Any other comments about that?
I guess I've only got 35 years to go to catch up.
It's a lofty goal.
Brace yourself, Bill.
110.
Little did you know.
He's a mechanic.
So as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, there has been a bit of discussion about the meeting format. These items 2, 3, and 2 and 3 anyway, and the staff report format are all kind of tied together. And as I say, maybe this discussion is because I'm too hung up on process, or I'm not familiar enough with the process that a land division should be following. So if no other members, if other members are perfectly satisfied with the process that we're using, that's great. I just still have got this idea that when we're looking at each application, that somehow we should be, moving to approve it or not, based on the conditions as read. And maybe Steve, you can give us a little bit of your thoughts. You've got experience with other land divisions in other municipalities, so.
Certainly. Well, I can tell the committee that I actually am a committee member back in Tay Township, and in that regard, I mean, they do it somewhat differently than what you just experienced tonight. But to your point about moving and seconding applications, so we do that at Tay, where we consider and vote on through a mover and seconder on each application. That way, if there's changes to conditions, for example, that happened tonight, at least the committee is in support of that through the appropriate calling of the vote. There has been times with that committee where me as the only planner get into a verbal discourse, and in the end, when changes like that happen, deferrals happen. So you need to vote on those appropriately. So in terms of a meeting format, I think what you are doing is perfectly fine with the addition of what we just mentioned. Another thing that we do in Tay is that that's a little different than here is our chair reads all the conditions, but I don't welcome that on any chair.
Thank you.
Often laughed at our chair. So that's good that that task is with Michelle. So the other thing too that our chair does do, and I think it is something to maybe for this committee to consider, is he actually formally opens the public portion of the meeting to allow for sort of attendees to have discussion, and then he closes that in so many words, and then he allows the committee to have a fulsome debate on that before he calls the motion. So that may be something the committee wants to formalize as a means of giving what they call fair consideration of any public content that arises through the public portion of the meeting. So
yeah, that works for me, that because then there's an opportunity for discourse between the committee members and the people that want to speak to an application, but it also allows the committee an opportunity to talk it over after without any interjections.
That's right.
Thoughts? I'm just looking for thoughts from the committee. Pat, what do you think?
I like the idea of getting the motion on the floor with a mover and a seconder, having a discussion, and having made some motions that were defeated in the past and other issues. It's always a good as a matter of record to find out where committee members stand. It's a formalization of what we're doing. That's I'm old school, I guess, but I like the idea of a mover seconder discussion.
Well, me too. I mean, especially if we're having moving and seconding, adopting the agenda,
Yeah.
you know, the minutes, and we're actually not moving and seconding for what the meat of the meeting is. So, okay, right on. I'm glad to hear that. Any thoughts, Bob or Bill?
No, I would support what Pat just said.
Okay.
No, I prefer to see it, the motion put on the floor so it can be discussed and then moved and seconded and passed.
Okay, content of planning reports to members. Steve, did you want to say something about that, or either Steve or Michelle?
Well, I think this goes part and parcel with
What we're talking
agenda
about.
item 11.6. So what Michelle and I discussed last week was changing up the style of the report somewhat. I know I have experience where to help with the motions for approving or denying applications. So what we've done, or at least my experience is to present all the conditions up front at the start of the report. That way they're front and center, and they're not really lost or missed during the course of a public meeting. So that's one format change that I would suggest. And the other thing, it's just, I guess maybe I'm getting long in the tooth, but I know that I know that I like to present to committee reports that are not overly verbose. I tend to spend most of my time making sure the conditions are right, so that ultimately, if the committee sees fit to approve them, that they have the best product going forward. And I will put a lot of content into reports when there's obviously public interest in files. But for something as routine as a right-of-way, I don't think the committee necessarily needs to have a 7 or 8 page report on a right-of-way. So hopefully you'll see fit for me to have fewer words in my report unless the issues warrant it.
Thoughts about that? You've seen the example of the report.
Bill here. There's not quite to do with that, but in the committee of adjustment, we usually get told like the lot number and the municipal address. For some reason, maybe I'm more visual than some people. Tonight I was able to figure out in the body of the report where the properties were, and most of them are Minden Hills, so I recognize that. But I noticed whenever I first started in this committee, trying to actually picture in my head where the locations were, just based on, I guess, GIS or, assessment application, I was having difficulty there. There's no concerns about putting a municipal address under freedom of information or anything, is there?
I don't believe so, but Michelle, you may want to chime in there.
Our committee of adjustment does the same thing, Bill. The address, the formal lot description, as well as the physical address is included. And it helps particularly with the item that we might discuss next. If we decide that we want to do site inspections, it makes a big difference.
Yeah. It's just like tonight, I find that it's somewhere in the body of the report was the municipal address. And that seemed to help me, yeah, I know the area, I know the location. and help me make any decisions or come up with any questions I may have come up with.
I hear you completely about being a visual person, because I read the reports, like I go through all of it, and then when we discuss it, I land on the sketch or the GIS, or whatever I can physically see. Okay, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
Michelle, are there any concerns about that?
Not that I can think of right now, Chair Danielson, but I will do just a little bit more research just to make sure that, we're protecting the privacy of the applicants and not doing, there's no breach of freedom of information. But at the moment, I'm not seeing anything, but I will just double check and confirm for you for sure.
Yeah, I think if you talk to a couple of the local planners, they'll confirm that. I know that that our Committee of Adjustment reports have until now included addresses.
I think a notice of the Committee of Adjustment report has to be posted on the property anyway, so it gives the neighbors an opportunity to
exactly
make comment. Yeah.
So the only other question that I would have, Steve, about your proposed staff report is that the conditions would also be on the report.
That's right. So if you look at, that's the third on the list.
So, right.
Yeah.
All I saw was yeah, okay, right on, perfect. Any other comments or concerns about the report? How it's, how Steve is proposing to present it to us? I guess we'll see how it works.
So I'll just give you a little funny story. I looked at the agenda and I saw that report and I downloaded it twice because it was blank. And I kept wondering, where's the report?
You know what? You're not alone. I did the same thing. Only
if only a planner could get away with a report like that, eh?
Not happening.
Just for the committee's information, staff have been doing quite a bit of work in the background in iCompass, and the proposed changes to Steve's report also help with accessibility. So we're doing accessibility considerations, as you know, with the new act and everything that's come out. So part of the change too also is in consideration of accessibility and ease of reading the report as well. Just wanted to bring that to the committee's attention so you were aware of, left justifying and some of the other changes to make it easier read, screen readers and that type of information. So just so the committee's aware.
So, sorry if I may ask one last question on this staff report. Do the survey or sketches that come in, do they become part of your report or are they a separate document?
I think for iCompass's perspective, they would normally show up as attachments.
But the document would become part of the agenda.
Yes. Yeah. But if you look up in sort of the header of the staff report, it says prepared by and then attachments. So they would be listed as schedules to this report. So
just have to make sure that you go to the bottom of the report and check to see what's there for attachments. Okay.
Well, just on that point, what we'll do is we'll lead with the first attachment will be a location map, and the second map, the second schedule will be the actual severance sketch.
That sound reasonable?
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good. Okay, so the next item is about site inspections. Historically, I'm not sure whether, I think it sounds to me like historically the committee used to do site inspections on all of the applications, similar to committees of adjustment. So I guess we're just putting this on the agenda for a discussion item, see what committee members think, and maybe hear Steve's thoughts. What's your experience with committees? Do they normally go and inspect all the properties?
Well, when you work at a township level, yes. So all our on my committee, for example, at TAY, yes, we go to all the sites. Individually, we don't carpool because then that gets you in trouble. But yes, we do. Granted, the county is such a large land area that you could, in some cases, you could be in all over the place. One thing we could do from an efficiency standpoint is deal with consents that are sort of geographically together. Just as, for example, we had most of them in Minden Hills tonight, we could look at scheduling, every month a little differently, so that geographically there's an opportunity to sort of drive a general area without too many miles being put on your vehicles. So, but yes, if the committee wants to do those inspections, I know I do when I'm on my committee. So,
Well, I know that in my case, I'd be more inclined, given the geography of the county, to go to the ones that are within my municipal area, the ones that I'm more familiar with. But
Yeah, I think I would agree with that, Liz. I was just going to say that, if they're in Minden Hills, I can deal with those and visit them. And if it doesn't even seem too contentious, if it's just, something pretty basic, would you really need to go? I know in the Committee of Adjustment, we visit all the properties and take photographs and educate ourselves on what's going on. And yeah, I would be in favor of, I know if we decided to go to every property, I can run up 100, 150 kilometers just going around Minden Hills. And it cost me $140 to fill up my truck yesterday. So.
Not awful. Pat, what are your thoughts?
When I first saw this, a couple things was, I don't think we need to go out and do site visits for simple severances. And I mean, if we get those contentious ones, I would really like to go out and have a look at them. If we got, 27 emails against it kind of thing. Also the timing of it. So would that delay the applications then if we had to have it presented and then do the site visit that knocks it off another month? I just
no, what I found, like certainly with my committee, what we try to do is get the agenda out earlier, so you have, instead of having a weekend to do it, you have upwards of a full week in advance. So that would be the compromise, shall we say?
So you'd have to get those reports out to committee then a day or two earlier.
That's right.
Okay.
Bob, did you have any thoughts?
So I was just going to ask Steve if do county staff do any site visits?
Certainly, that's part of our professional obligation, shall we say, to actually go out and see sites, because I know there's been one or two planners who've been embarrassed when they've been asked if they've gone out to see the site and they haven't. And so it's always been a practice of mine.
So will that, I don't think I've seen it, I might be wrong, but will you be noting that in the report that a site visit was done on such and such a date?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I sort of concur with what Pat's saying. If there's a particularly contentious one, or one that you're familiar with, or that tweaks a question, that sometimes you really need to look at it. But the timing, it's interesting because in our last Committee of Adjustment meeting in Algonquin Highlands, the notices were posted sometime in December. We got the report, a few weeks later, and you go out to do your inspection, but there's been a huge dump of snow in the meantime, and the properties are not accessible, really, to look at it all. And sometimes, depending on the extent of the application, you can approve it, but sometimes you really need to have a look. So we deferred some. Which
and certainly in the past, the planning department has actually facilitated, transport to and from, certainly with waterfront properties. I know in Seguin we would arrange for skidoo rides actually. So that's possible too. But to the warden's point, we would all often defer applications till the spring. Certainly island properties, for example, we wouldn't consider during the winter months.
So, Michelle, you're kind of clear on where we've landed with this discussion?
Thank you. Yes,
Okay.
I'll make some notes and I'll reflect committee's wishes and discussion in the minutes section for review for next meeting. That's okay.
Yep, that's great. So the next item is a discussion on Bill 276 and amendments to the Planning Act. Do you want to speak to that?
Sure. So one of the things that the present provincial government has been trying to do is streamline the approval processes and make it easier for applicants to go about business as it relates to land development. So they changed the provisional approval from 1 year to 2 years. That's the most significant change. And so that's a good thing. Even myself, with some of the conditions, the complexity of the conditions that we're now imposing on approvals, it does take a long time now to get those approvals in place. So this is a welcome change. The other thing too that they've done, it's not in this particular bill, but it was in a bill that they passed just before Christmas. They now have done away with validation of titles. Now the Committee of Adjustment, or sorry, the Land Division Committee may have seen those in the past. Now they've changed the regulations to allow for lawyers, for property owners to verify title without the need to go through a certificate or go through a validation process for a certificate of title. So that was another change that will improve service delivery because they don't have to go before committee or council.
Thoughts or questions on that? Thank you for that update. It's much appreciated. Doesn't always work out as positive items like this time. Okay, so we were agreed upon the staff report that you've presented to us. We look forward to seeing the new and improved version of the reports. No closed session. And the next committee meeting date is March the 14th. Hopefully that works for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So just on that, you'll see a number of right-of-way applications coming forward. And there'll be a few applications that were sort of lost in consultant reviews back in 2021. So hopefully we'll start to clear the decks on last year's applications. So you see a couple of those coming forward as well.
Right on. Yeah, I really appreciate the time you've given us tonight. We've had a little bit longer meeting than normal, but you know, we have had changeover in staff, some gaps in staff, and so it just seemed like maybe a good idea to land on you know, how we're going to go forward. So I appreciate the time. Having said that, could I have a mover and a seconder to adjourn? Mr. Kennedy and Mr. Blakes. Thanks, guys. We'll see you in.
Lovely spending Valentine with you all.
Oh, happy Valentine's. Got me roses.
Got my flowers yet? Anyway. Okay. You guys have a good night.
Have a good night.
Have a good night, everyone. Thanks. Good meeting.
Night. See you next month.
Yeah.